Next on Currents News, Pope Francis taking new action today to protect the secrecy of confession. The Holy Father ordering priests to protect the sacramental seal with their lives if necessary. Protesters breaking through the doors of Hong Kong's government headquarters. They're fighting against extradition to China. The NYPD providing dignity and respect to an infant found dead and abandoned on a Brooklyn street. Plus, Bishop DiMarzio is encouraging the parish of St. Pius X as they rebuild from a devastating fire. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Emily Druby. Pope Francis is taking action to ensure confessions are kept secret. The Holy Father ordering a new document be released this morning that affirms the absolute secrecy of everything said in confession. He's also telling priests to defend the sacramental seal at all cost, even at the cost of their lives. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports.
For Monsignor Thomas Caserta, nothing could force him to reveal what was told to him in the confessional.
If that means I go to jail, well, I go to jail.
The Holy Father's order this morning to release the new document about keeping confession secret is coming, according to the Vatican, in the light of a worried negative prejudice against the Church.
Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
In California, legislation already passed the state Senate, which calls for priests to tell authorities the details of penitents' confession of sexual abuse crimes. Jerry Hill introduced the bill, which is not yet law in the state.
It's worked. It has been successful in identifying, bringing to justice, and preventing child abuse and neglect.
Monsignor Caserta is the pastor of St. Bernadette Church in Dyker Heights, Brooklyn, and a theology professor at St. John's University. He's also involved in the spiritual direction of priests and religious in the Brooklyn Diocese. He's calling Senator Hill's measure a direct attack on the Church.
It is a gross violation of religious liberty, which is exactly what the Holy Father said. And that in no way, under no circumstances, should a priest be expected to reveal anything he heard.
Monsignor Caserta said he would appeal to the sinner instead.
I could try to use my moral authority as a priest to urge the person to go forward and report their wrongdoing to the appropriate authorities. But I can't make that a condition of their absolution.
The Pope's new document points out that keeping confession secret is an act of martyrdom to the unique and universal saving power of Christ and his Church. In Dyker Heights, Brooklyn, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
The Los Angeles Archdiocese and other California dioceses are mobilizing the state's Catholics to oppose the confession bill. Using social media, preaching, and newspaper columns, the church is urging the faithful to contact their elected representatives. The bill is expected to have a vote in the California State Assembly in September. The Pope is praising President Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un for their face-to-face meeting yesterday in the demilitarized zone. The Holy Father speaking about it just hours after the encounter occurred.
Saluto I protagonisti con la preghiera che tale gesto significativo costituisca un passo ulteriore nel cammino della pace, non solo su quella penisola, ma a favore del mondo intero.
When Trump crossed over the DMZ, he became the first sitting U.S. president to enter North Korean territory. The two men agreed to resume denuclearization talks in the middle of the month. Reporters asked Trump if he'd welcome Kim to the White House.
Oh, sorry. I would invite him right now. Let's go. To the White House. Absolutely.
North Korea's state-run media called the handshake between Trump and Kim in their borders a historic and amazing event. Restarting the disarmament talks is likely to face some obstacles. North Korea's nuclear program remains intact, and short-range missile testing resumed in May. Iran is claiming it has smashed through the limit for stockpiling uranium, a key component for nuclear weapons. Tensions between Tehran and Washington are high, and the Islamic Republic's action follows a missed deadline it had set for a new nuclear deal. Now Iran is threatening to increase enrichment of the uranium closer to weapon grade by July 7th. A turbulent day in Hong Kong with protesters storming the government's headquarters and police firing tear gas to get them out. The demonstrators are targeting a proposed law that critics fear could be used to extradite political dissidents to mainland China. Kristen Holmes reports the latest.
Hundreds of protesters storming Hong Kong's Legislative Council building. Police firing tear gas to clear out the protesters on the 22nd anniversary of Hong Kong's return to Chinese rule. The protests began June 9th over a controversial bill which would allow extradition to mainland China. Many fearing the bill's passage could lead to arrests of those who oppose the Chinese government. Chinese President Xi Jinping has remained at a distance despite the crowds challenging his regime.
I think it's pretty clear that Xi's going to have to now start taking this a lot more seriously. He has kept himself at distance from this, and I think after today's events, he's going to be asking himself how much longer can he stay away from this, and how does he react? Does he overreact and cause this to go even more violent?
While the bill has been tabled, some demonstrators are calling for it to be completely withdrawn and now are demanding greater freedoms.
The leaders of the movement were saying that we want to have universal suffrage in our way. We want the chief executive to resign. So you see there are different agendas, but maybe the agendas are not shared by all people.
Protesters showing no sign of backing down. Kristen Holmes, Currents News.
When a fierce fire destroyed the interior of St. Pius X Church, the parish vowed to rebuild. Now their Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio is giving strong encouragement to the congregation and their pastor.
You are 100% behind us, that we really appreciate that.
Father Jean Miguel Auguste and Bishop DiMarzio surveying the damage to fire-ravaged St. Pius X Church.
Well, we're looking forward to the rededication.
The bishop bringing much-needed hope during this difficult time.
Today, I don't see my bishop as the bishop, as a pastor. He came as a father. He came to console the people of St. Pius. He came to be with the people of St. Pius. He came to console me, to encourage me.
Video captured during the fire of smoke pouring out of the building shows just how bad it was about 2 weeks ago. Almost everything destroyed. Scenes we recorded inside the church just one day after the fire shows that damage, from a smoke-covered cross to melted floors. The focus is now on rebuilding. The bishop bringing encouragement during his visit to the parish.
The parish will continue, and we're very happy that there's a good conclusion to the tragedy.
Insurance should be covering the remodel because the fire was deemed an electrical wiring accident. But still, a lot of work needs to be done, and it could take up to a year. The bishop adding he's not worried because this parish has been so strong during this tragedy.
I'm really happy that the people are very resilient. That's New Yorkers. We don't give up easily. They want to still come to the church as their parish. We're going to restore it so they can continue to come.
There are a lot of items the parish needs that will not be covered by insurance and will need to be bought. If you're interested in helping out, you can send or drop off checks to the rectory. Their address is 148-10 249th Street in Rosedale, New York. The zip code is 11422. Or you can call the rectory at 718-525-9099 with any questions. To read about Bishop DiMarzio's mission to St. Pius X Church, go to thetablet.org and click on Diocesan News found in the news menu bar. The mother and wife of the migrants who drowned last week is being sustained by her faith. Tania Vanessa Avalos lost her husband Oscar and 23-month-old daughter Valeria when they were swept away crossing the Rio Grande River. The family was seeking asylum in the U.S. According to the bishop on the Mexican side, Tania is a woman of faith who is praying for consolation and strength. Today, Oscar and Valeria were buried in their homeland of El Salvador. Only friends and family were allowed inside the cemetery. Last week, images of their drowned bodies sent shockwaves around the world, underscoring the dangers of illegal border crossings. Pope Francis mourned their deaths. Tonight, there are calls to honor 9/11 first responder Luis Alvarez with a key to the city. He died at the age of 53 on Saturday from cancer linked to the time he spent in the rubble at Ground Zero. Just 3 weeks ago, he was pushing Congress to extend the fund for emergency workers. His friend John Hughes says he's going back to finish what Alvarez started.
We're going to mourn today and tomorrow, and we're going to bury a hero on Wednesday, but make no mistake, we're going to be sharpening our swords, and we're going back to D.C. with a new vigor, and Congress better sense our urgency.
Alvarez will be honored with a funeral organized by the NYPD and the United States military. A Florida man appearing in court this afternoon to answer charges of the attempted murder of a sheriff's deputy. Rocky Rudolph is the suspect, and he's accused of dragging Deputy Aaron Bliss with his car. The confrontation caught on the officer's body camera. It erupted when the deputy asked the driver to turn off the engine.
Do me a favor. Do me a favor. Do me a favor. I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now. Stop! Stop! Stop!
The deputy is pulled hundreds of feet along the highway ramp until he falls off. After an 8-hour manhunt, the suspect was spotted and a SWAT team arrested him. There's a lot more news headed your way. A moving display of respect for an infant discovered dead on a Brooklyn street. How supporters of life and the NYPD joined together. He was known as Dagger John, the first Archbishop of New York, John Hughes, and his connection with today's immigration crisis. This symbols of authority for archbishops, what they are, and what the Pope had to say. An NYPD honor guard escorted the casket of baby Monica into Brooklyn's Basilica of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. Named after St. Monica, the infant's lifeless body was discovered months ago, abandoned on a street. Now supporters of life giving her a final service with dignity and respect. Currents News' Tim Harfman is here again with the report.
NYPD officers escorted the funeral hearse as it slowly rolled up to the Basilica of Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, Saturday morning. It was the final farewell to a child who never had the chance to take her first breath. A bagpipe blared as one officer carried the tiny white casket into the basilica. Inside that casket, the body of a baby girl, believed to have been in the 5th month of pregnancy. She was abandoned by her mother earlier this year. The funeral was organized by Life Center of New York, a crisis pregnancy center in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. Fred Trabolsi is the executive director. He asked the NYPD to take part in the service, and after hearing the heartbreaking story, the department agreed.
We're giving in debt to baby Monica the respect and dignity that she didn't have in life.
Baby Monica. That's what they named her in honor of Saint Monica. On February 18th, baby Monica's body was discovered in a bag near this tree, here on the corner of Linden Boulevard and Bradford Street in East New York, Brooklyn. According to the NYPD, the mother hasn't been identified. The Life Center was so touched by the news, they contacted the medical examiner's office. And within the last few weeks, the office released baby Monica's body so they could give her a final farewell.
We're not judging the mom or anything to that, but we want to show that the culture of life exists around the culture of death that we have in our state and in our country.
Over 100 Catholics filled the pews of the Basilica. Kathy Donahoe was one of them. She's the president of Bridge to Life, a pregnancy center in Flushing, Queens.
God bless this baby. We know she's in the arms of our Lord, but pray for the mothers that have such tremendous decisions to make when they're pregnant.
Baby Monica was buried at Resurrection Catholic Cemetery in Staten Island. Her body has finally been laid to rest. In Sunset Park, Brooklyn, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
There are safe havens available in New York for parents who want to relinquish custody of a newborn. Under the law, a parent is allowed to abandon an infant 1 month old or younger anonymously and without fear of prosecution. The child must be left at a safe location, such as a hospital, a staffed police or fire station, or a church. The garment is a symbol of authority for archbishops, and the ones newly appointed by Pope Francis took part in a centuries-old tradition this weekend. They received a pallium, a white band made of lamb's wool, as a symbol of their office. The Holy Father explained its spiritual significance.
Ricorda la pecorella che il pastore è chiamato a portare sulle spalle. È segno che I pastori non vivono per se stessi, ma per le pecore.
31 archbishops received a pallium, and 2 of them Americans, Archbishop Wilton Gregory of Washington, D.C., and Archbishop Michael Burns from Guam. Bishops have long been fighting for the rights of immigrants here in the United States. While today's migration crisis is along the southern border, in the past, Europeans, including Irish Catholics, were discriminated against in this country. And a big fighter for Irish immigrants was New York's first Archbishop, John Hughes. Here to talk more about Archbishop Hughes is Catholic historian Richard McCann. Richard, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Richard, tell us a bit about what life was like for Irish immigrants during Archbishop Hughes' time.
Not very good. The Irish were fleeing probably the greatest cataclysmic social event of the 19th century, economic and social event, and that is, of course, the Great Potato Famine. Approximately 2 million people between 1845 and 1855 would either die of starvation or flee their native land as the result of famine. At first, they were received with some measure of sympathy, but then eventually they were viewed as different because compared to the native population in America at that time, which was principally a pretty solid Anglo-Saxon Protestant American background, they were viewed as different, and because of their religion, they were viewed as kind of a fifth column of the Pope, something very different from what had been the case in Republican America.
So Archbishop's nickname was Dagger.
Yes.
Why was he called that?
Well, you see, that was when a bishop signs his name, generally he puts a little cross next to his signature. And so Hughes' opponents and his detractors looked at that dagger, looked at that cross, and they saw it as a dagger. And because of Hughes' personality, he was a very, very sort of unrelenting defender of the rights of the Irish people, and he never feared going after their detractors and against the people that opposed Roman Catholics or immigrants generally. And so he was associated with that name Dagger because that's the way he sort of attacked.
And how did he use that, that personality to help people that were Irish immigrants?
Well, he was an unrelenting spokesperson for the downtrodden and for the reviled. He was in the forefront of establishing Catholic education in New York City for the purpose of making sure that Catholic children who otherwise would have been subjected to the daily revilement in the public school system against the church, against the Pope, against priests, had a place where they could go and to be educated. Otherwise, the alternative was they would have been on the street.
So knowing the kind of person that he was, how do you think Archbishop Hughes would feel about the status of immigration today?
Well, it's a complicated question, but there are 2 basic elements to this as I see. In line, of course, with Pope Francis and the Catholic Bishops' Conference, we have an obligation to be humane and to treat people who are migrating with humanity and with dignity, because most of the people who are crossing the southern border really are seeking better economic life for themselves and for their families. But there's also another side, which is the legalistic side. There is the observance of the rule of law and the observance of being able to immigrate in a legal and proper fashion, in an orderly type of fashion. Hughes, while very much a proponent of compassion for the Irish and for immigrants generally, was also a man who had a great deal of respect for Americanism, the Constitution, and the rule of law. So I don't think that John Hughes would have advocated or been very much supportive of a system where laws were flouted in order to achieve an end. But at the same time, he would have been the first person before the Congress testifying and reviling and going after both Democrats and Republicans who in Congress don't seem to be able to get together to solve this problem. He would have been really at them day and night to see why they can't come together to find a solution.
And just really quickly for me, what can we learn from his work in immigration?
What we can learn is that there is obviously a need to be compassionate. There is a need to recognize that people who are less fortunate we have an obligation to care for them, an obligation to allow them the opportunity to prove themselves in a society and to provide them with support to do that. But at the same time, we need an immigration system that while it meets the needs of human beings, especially children, is one that's also in line with our laws and in line with what's sensible for the people who are trying to come here to better themselves.
Richard McCann, Catholic historian, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Pope Francis will be canonizing new saints soon. That word coming from the Vatican this morning. One is John Henry Newman, a prominent convert to Catholicism in the 19th century. He was renowned as a brilliant thinker and was made a cardinal by Pope Leo XIII. Among the other saintly candidates are 4 nuns, 2 of which started religious orders. The canonizations will take place on October 13th. Still to come on Currents News, what happened when a hailstorm hit Mexico? The results are hard to believe. And an honor from France for a U.S. World War II vet who's 100 years old. And the tablet has a brand new page called Our Diocesan Family, where you can share your pictures of recent baptisms, Holy Communions, confirmations, marriage, all of the joyous sacraments. For more details and to submit your photos, go to thetablet.org/ourdiocesanfamily. Your picture may be published in an upcoming issue of the newspaper. We'll be right back. Summer is in full swing in many places around the world, but this weekend, a Mexican city woke up to a shocking surprise. Don't adjust your TV sets, that's ice on the ground Sunday in Guadalajara. The Mexican city woke up to 3 feet of ice after a heavy hailstorm. Authorities have been scrambling to clear the roads. There have not been any reported injuries or deaths due to the storm. Finally tonight, Robert Rigel just turned 100 years old, and he's had an amazing life as a husband, father, and World War II veteran. He's been honored by the American government multiple times, but Dakota Sherrick reports he is now an international hero.
A room filled with veterans and their families came together to celebrate one of their own. 100-year-old Robert Rigel fought in 4 battles during World War II.
He doesn't like to talk about a lot of the stuff. He kind of puts it out of his mind, but he's still very proud.
He's earned a Victory Medal and other high honors, but his latest recognition isn't coming from the American government.
A true American hero. And today, by decision of the French president, he will become officially a true French hero.
Rigel was awarded the French Legion of Honor Medal, the highest military distinction given for those who have accomplished exceptional deeds for France.
I'm so surprised. I had no idea this was coming.
Rigel's son Chuck and many other family members came to the Wisconsin Veterans Home in King to witness the ceremony.
I feel blessed to be part of it, to be his son, and have him still alive when he can experience this.
Consul General of France Guillaume Lacroix wanted to not only recognize Rigel, but all Wisconsin veterans who helped his country.
They risked everything for us. They risked everything for the freedom of America and the freedom of France. Therefore, it is very important for us to recognize their sacrifice.
Though Rigel's service ended 7 decades ago, his fight for freedom is something that will never be forgotten by America or its allies.
I'm very proud of him and very proud of his service, and the fact that he got this medal is just the frosting on the cake, so it's really very special.
What an amazing hero. Happy belated birthday to you, Mr. Rigel, and thank you for your service. That is Currents News. I'm Emily Drewby. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.